She told me she'd be home by 8. That was the first lie that evening. Not the first one she ever told. No, those started way earlier. I just hadn't learned to see them for what they were. This one, though, it stuck in my head because it was too specific. I'll be home by 8. Don't wait up. You don't say both of those things unless you're preparing for one of them to be false. So I waited. The kids were already in bed. The house was too quiet, the kind of quiet where your own thoughts get loud. I wasn't pacing. I wasn't nervous. I just sat in the dark living room with the TV on mute, staring at a frozen frame from some crime documentary, my dinner still sitting untouched on the table. Something in me had stopped working properly weeks ago. Maybe longer. 9:13. I sent a single text. You good? Read. No reply. 10 minutes later I called. Straight to voicemail. By 10:45, she still wasn't home. I wasn't the man sitting in the shadows wondering if his wife was cheating. I was the man who knew she was and was done pretending otherwise. Something switched inside me, something I didn't recognize at first. It wasn't rage. It wasn't heartbreak. It was precision. I didn't look for her. I didn't drive around like a desperate fool trying to catch her in the act. That part of me, the part that cared about what she was doing right now, was gone. What I wanted now was answers. And I already knew where to start looking. Her laptop was on the kitchen counter. She never used her laptop. She had a new phone, some latest model she kept chained to her like a limb. But the laptop? It was a leftover piece of her old life, the one where she worked in the office and sent me selfies from her desk with little hearts in the captions. She hadn't touched it in months. So I opened it. The password was the name of her first dog. A detail I only remembered because she cried when it died. I guess it still meant something to her. I guess wrong. The browser opened straight into her Gmail. She never logged out. There were no suspicious emails. But she forgot about the Google Sync, something I wouldn't have known existed unless I went looking. There were synced messages from a separate account. One I didn't know about. It was almost too easy. No password prompt, no security wall. Just her entire second life sitting there, waiting to be read. There were messages from someone named C. No photo. Just a letter. Cold and anonymous. The kind of guy who knew exactly what he was doing. The tone was casual at first. Then flirtatious. Then graphic. Then mundane again. Like they were together all the time. Like he knew what we had for dinner last Tuesday. Because he did. She told him everything. How boring I was. How checked out I'd become. How she couldn't believe she used to love me. How the only reason she hadn't left yet was because of the kids and the mortgage and timing. She said I was too soft to handle the truth. Those words. Too soft to handle the truth. That was when my heart stopped aching. It didn't shatter. It calcified. She came home at 12:16. I didn't hear the car. I didn't hear the door. I heard the laugh. That fake laugh she used when she was still drunk on someone else's attention. It hit me like static in a dead room. She didn't expect me to be awake. I was sitting on the staircase, just out of sight. She didn't see me at first. I watched her toss her keys into the bowl, drop her purse like it offended her, and walk to the fridge like she'd just returned from a spa day. Then I stood. She jumped when she saw me. I said nothing. Just looked at her. Let her sit in that silence, the one she never could stand for more than 3 seconds. What are you doing? She asked. Not hey or sorry I'm late. Just what are you doing, like I was the one out of place in our own home. I didn't answer her question. I walked past her, slow, careful, and placed her laptop in front of her on the kitchen counter. Then I opened the screen. She froze. Tell me who C is. Her face didn't change. Not guilt. Not fear. Not even surprise. Just a slow, tired blink like I'd asked her to explain algebra to a dog. I don't owe you an explanation, she said. Not a denial. Not a lie. Not even a weak excuse. I should have yelled. I should have flipped the table or cried or begged or done something. But all I did was nod. And then I said the one thing I knew would break through her performance: you're a better liar when you actually care about the person. That made her flinch. Barely. But it was there. Still, she recovered. She picked up her phone like I wasn't even standing there and muttered, I'm not doing this right now. I'm exhausted. She walked toward the stairs. Just walked. No tears. No apologies. Nothing. And I let her. Because I wasn't going to fight for her anymore. I was planning something else. Something she wouldn't see coming. The next morning, she made pancakes. I came downstairs to find her flipping them like we hadn't stood at the edge of war 6 hours earlier. She was humming. There was orange juice on the table. Bacon. The kind the kids liked. She wore a hoodie, no makeup, hair tied up. Her version of domestic camouflage. The illusion of normalcy, neatly plated and served with syrup. She didn't look at me when I walked in. Just said, "You want coffee?" I didn't answer. I sat down across from her, and for a minute we were just a man and a woman at breakfast. That minute dragged itself across the floor like something dying. Then she looked up. Calm. Focused. Her eyes narrowed slightly, not in confusion, but calculation. She was trying to read how much I knew. She'd gone through our messages after I went to bed, realized I'd found the sync to count. She didn't panic. That wasn't her style. She adjusted. The way liars do when they've practiced this too many times. You read things out of context, she said. That account isn't what you think. I didn't laugh. I didn't blink. She put a pancake on my plate like it was a peace treaty. Look, she said, tone shifting into something soft and condescending. I know you're hurt, and I get that, but you can't just go through my stuff and decide there's some big scandal. You haven't been easy to talk to lately. You twist everything into drama. That's when I understood her game. She wasn't going to deny the affair. She was going to make me doubt my own sanity. Make me feel like a jealous husband seeing ghosts in the walls. If I called her out, I was unstable. If I forgave her, I was weak. Either way, she won. I didn't twist anything, I said slowly, calmly. I read every word. I saw the videos. Her face cracked, just slightly. She wasn't expecting that, but there were attachments too, little files buried in threads. Clips of her in hotel rooms, voice notes where she laughed about what an emotional sponge I was. Said she had to pretend to care about me because I looked like a kicked puppy when I tried to talk about my day. Her hand twitched. She picked up her phone and scrolled, pretending she was bored, pretending my words weren't burning through her thin layer of detachment. You had no right, she said finally. Whatever you saw, that's on you. If you had issues with me, you should have said something instead of playing spy. You've been cheating on me for 6 months. And? What do you want me to say? That I'm sorry? You think that's going to change anything? There it was. No apology. No fake tears. Just that arrogant shrug, like her betrayal was a scheduling issue I'd overreacted to. She was done hiding it. That made her dangerous. Because people like her, people who stop pretending, they don't care who they take down when the mask comes off. The kids came downstairs before I could say another word. She switched again instantly. Smiled. Kissed their heads. Poured milk into cereal bowls and asked if they wanted extra syrup. She was flawless at it. The concerned mother. The devoted wife. Her whole world was an act and the stage was set in our kitchen. I watched my daughter giggle. Watched my son talk about his art project. I looked at her laughing with them like nothing had ever happened, and I realized I couldn't confront her again. Not like that. Not in this house. Not with them watching. So I smiled too. I cleaned my plate. I made a joke. I kissed my kids goodbye and left for work. Only I didn't go to work. I went to a lawyer. I went to a storage facility. I went to a bank I'd opened a second account at 3 weeks ago, back when I first started suspecting her, back when I still wanted to prove myself wrong. I withdrew just enough to make things move without alerting her. I called a friend I hadn't spoken to in 4 years. The kind of friend you keep for the kind of favor you never want to need. And I made a plan. Not to scream. Not to argue. I was going to disappear. But not without the kids. Not without a clean surgical extraction. And when it was done, I wouldn't be the one left answering questions. She would. She had no idea what was happening behind her back. That's the thing about manipulators, they're so used to running the board, they forget other people can play too. She thought I'd sulk, stew, maybe cry once or twice in the shower. She assumed I'd come crawling back with some pitiful compromise, asking her to work on things. She didn't see what I was building in the quiet. I started small, changed my work schedule, told her I had new clients. I didn't. I was using the time to meet with attorneys, gather documents, make copies of birth certificates, passports, insurance policies. Every piece of our life, neatly scanned, tripled, and stored in digital and physical backups. I took pictures of every scratch and bruise on the kids she'd called accidents. Not abuse, she was too smart for that. But neglect. Carelessness. Proof. She was slipping already. Getting reckless. Coming home later. Forgetting what lies she'd told. She used to be so meticulous. Now she was lazy with her cheating, comfortable. The kind of comfortable that made her think she could FaceTime someone from our bedroom while I was at work and not consider I might have put a camera there 2 days ago. Yes, I put a camera in our bedroom. Do I feel proud of that? No. Do I feel justified? Absolutely. Because what I saw on that footage wasn't just her talking to him, it was the way she talked. Soft voice. Smiles she hadn't given me in years. Inside jokes. Plans. We'll figure out the kids, she told him. He's too passive to make a move. She thought I was passive. She thought I was a background character in her spotlight. I started keeping a log, every lie, every late night, every change in her story. Dates, times, screenshots. I even pulled data from the smart home system. When lights went on. Which doors opened. How long the front door stayed unlocked while our kids were asleep. Meanwhile, I played my part to perfection. I laughed when she laughed. I complimented her outfits. I planned a family picnic. I became the husband she could no longer stand to look at without guilt gnawing through her smile. And one day she cracked. It wasn't a big scene. She just snapped over something small. Said I was creeping her out, said I was acting weird. She said I was trying too hard. That one stung. Trying too hard. As if it was disgusting to be invested in a family you're about to lose. I told her I understood. That I'd give her space. That night, I booked 3 plane tickets, me and the kids. One way. Under a different last name. I didn't sleep. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table, watching the front door on my phone through the camera feed. She came home late again. Makeup smudged, hair wild. She smelled like perfume that wasn't hers. She didn't even say hi. She went upstairs, left her heels by the stairs and showered. Like always. But this time, she locked the door. Like that could stop what was already in motion. The next morning, I waited until she left to go to brunch with a friend. I packed bags. Quietly, precisely. I didn't take much, just what we needed. Essentials for the kids. Documents. Cash. Medicine. Their favorite stuffed animals. I deleted every message between us from my phone and wiped the browser on her laptop clean. Then I took the kids. Put them in the car. They thought we were going to the zoo. I told them to bring sunglasses. They were excited. I wanted to cry, but I didn't. I drove past our bank. Closed the account. Transferred what I could to the one in my name only. And then, I disappeared. I cut every line of contact. Blocked her number. Disabled GPS on the kids' tablets. Disconnected the Wi-Fi camera in the house. Wiped the baby monitor app. Burned the bridge so thoroughly she couldn't find Ash. And I waited. Waited for her to come home to an empty house. Waited for her to walk into silence, every drawer emptied of her control. Waited for her to realize she wasn't the one holding the strings anymore. I expected the first message around 3 p.m. It came at 2:47. Just a simple line, "Where are you?" I didn't answer. By 3:15, my phone had lit up with 10 missed calls and 6 voice messages. I didn't listen to any of them. I let them pile up, let the panic escalate. Her texts started to change tone quickly, concerned, then irritated, then accusing. By 4, she was threatening to call the police. By 5, she did. I got the call from a detective around 7 that evening. I was ready for it. I told him everything calmly, without emotion. I had full custody filed for and pending under emergency order. I sent him the folder my lawyer prepared. Timestamps, documentation, photos, recordings. Proof of mental instability, emotional negligence, and infidelity that placed our children in a toxic environment. It wasn't dramatic. The officer sounded tired. He said, "Sounds like you've got your ducks in a row." I told him I did. Then I hung up and held my daughter as she fell asleep in a motel room 4 hours from home. The noise of the air conditioner buzzing like distant thunder. The next day, she found my brother. Called him 20 times. Left a voicemail that sounded like it was made for a courtroom. If he doesn't bring my children back, I'm going to have him charged with kidnapping. But she was late to that party. Because by then, I had temporary sole custody granted on grounds of emotional harm. Her name was removed from every legal document that could be used to track us. The school had been notified, doctors informed, friends instructed to stay silent. Every move she tried to make already barricaded, and she couldn't handle it. That same night, she called from a blocked number. I answered out of curiosity. For the first time since I left, I wanted to hear her voice, not to connect, not for closure, but to study it like a criminal returning to the scene. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She laughed. You really think this is going to work? You really think you're going to paint me as the bad guy and just walk away clean? I said nothing. You're a joke, she hissed. You're a pathetic little man who got his ego bruised because I found someone who actually listens to me. You think being a control freak makes you some kind of hero, Dad? Still, I didn't speak. So she snapped. I never wanted those kids as much as you did. You wanted the family. You wanted the boring life. I wanted out years ago. You just made it easy. There it was. No mask. No spin. Just her, stripped bare, a viper with no more venom to waste. I hung up. My lawyer filed a restraining order the next morning. She didn't call again. But the silence was temporary. Her revenge would come in ways she thought were clever, legal tricks, lies to friends, attempts to discredit me with anyone who'd listen. She would pretend to be a victim. She'd post about abandonment online. Frame herself as a heartbroken mother blindsided by betrayal. But none of that mattered anymore. I wasn't playing defense. I wasn't waiting to see how far she'd go. I was 3 moves ahead and she hadn't even realized she was on the board. She found a lawyer within 3 days. Probably someone recommended by one of her wine night friends. The kind of sleek, overconfident professional who thought they could bulldoze their way through custody hearings with charm and threats. They sent me a letter. Well, they tried to. By the time they realized I wasn't coming back, the judge had already granted me an emergency restraining order. Sealed, confidential, and backed by a stack of evidence so thick it made her character assassination attempts look like finger paintings. But she didn't stop. She started calling mutual friends, feeding them a story so distorted, so carefully constructed. It would have been impressive if it hadn't been so desperate. She said I'd abducted the kids, that I was unstable, manipulative, controlling. She even dropped the old favorite, emotionally abusive. That one's easy to throw when the person you're accusing refuses to engage. One of those friends, Rachel, called me. She used to be neutral. Not anymore. She says you were tracking her phone, Rachel said. That you've been spying on her for months. She's not wrong, I replied. But I wasn't watching. I was documenting. She went quiet after that. The next blow came in the form of a petition, emergency motion for shared custody. It was bold, sloppy. It ignored every detail my lawyer had already submitted. No judge was going to read her messages about how having kids ruins everything and think she deserved overnight visits. Still, I had to prepare. Because if there's one thing worse than a liar, it's a liar with a lawyer who believes them. So I hit back with precision. Her text messages were entered into evidence. Not just to her boyfriend, but to 3 other men. Yes, 3. I hadn't expected that part either. I found them when I dug deeper into the synced cloud account. She'd staggered them. Different time zones. Different nicknames. She was running a schedule. I mapped it all out. Dates. Calls. Time away from the house. Time the kids were left unattended. Nights she'd come home pretending she was working late when she was actually in a stranger's apartment recording voice notes like a confessional diary to her new fling. Her lawyer must have read the files because the next day we got an offer. Mediation. Mediation meant she was scared. But I said no. We weren't going to compromise. She'd spent the last 2 years erasing me from her life, shrinking me into a paycheck and a placeholder. And now that I wasn't playing the fool anymore, she wanted middle ground? I don't think so. So I filed for full custody. Permanent. The kids were adjusting. They asked about her less than I'd expected. At first, they missed the routines. But children have a radar for stress. They sensed it before I did. My daughter started sleeping through the night again. My son stopped wetting the bed. The air in our new place was lighter, safer, cooked, cleaned. I rebuilt. And then she did the one thing I didn't expect. She showed up. Not at the house. Not at a court office. At my workplace. She stormed through the front lobby like she still had access to my world. Demanded to speak with me. Screamed when they said I was unavailable. Accused me of hiding from my responsibilities, of turning the kids against her. Security walked her out. She called me that night from a new number. "You're poisoning them," she snapped. "They'll grow up hating me because of you." "No," I said, my voice flat. "They'll grow up understanding what love is supposed to feel like." She didn't reply. I heard her breathing. Just breathing. Then she said something I didn't expect. "I hope you know you'll never be happy. No one will ever love you the way I pretended to." And she hung up. Pretended. Not loved. Not tried. Pretended. I let those words settle. Let them sit inside me like a weight that didn't hurt, just confirmed. I didn't call back. I didn't need to. The damage she thought she'd done, it was nothing compared to the storm I was still calmly walking her into. It arrived in a manila envelope, hand-delivered, not mailed. That was the first sign it wasn't from the court. It had no seal, no formality, just weight. Heavy. Like she'd packed her hatred into paper and prayed it would crush me. Inside, photos. Old ones. Some from the early years of our marriage. Some from a trip to Seattle when we were still pretending to be best friends. Some from the hospital when our daughter was born. First, I didn't understand. Then I saw what she'd done. She'd drawn on them. Red ink across my face. Words scratched into the photos like scars. Liar. Coward. Manipulator. Rotten father. One had my face entirely blacked out, with the word erase scrawled in the corner. Another, our wedding photo, had her own face circled, with "I was never yours" written across her dress. I sat there for a long time just holding them. There wasn't rage. Not yet. Just awe. At the level of effort. The madness of it. She had taken the time to curate this collection of bitterness, to send it to me like a message from a sinking ship. And the worst part? It worked for about an hour. Because for that hour, I wondered how someone could hate me that much after I'd spent years trying to hold together a house that was already on fire. I'd blamed myself for her distance, her coldness, her midnight absences. I thought I hadn't loved her enough, hadn't tried hard enough. But these photos, they were her confession. The kind no court needs, the kind no friend believes. But I saw it finally. Her goal wasn't to win. It was to ruin. Not just me, but the version of me that still thought love was something that could be negotiated. That night I burned the envelope. Not out of some poetic gesture. Just because it didn't belong in my world anymore. But that wasn't her final move. 2 days later, she filed a claim. Said I was abusing the children emotionally. Said they were afraid of me. Claimed I yelled. Isolated them. Created an environment of fear and control. No evidence. Just words. It was strategic. Forced a hearing. Forced me to defend myself in front of a judge. Forced my children to be interviewed by a counselor. And that was her mistake. Because when the counselor met with my kids, they didn't describe fear. They described bedtime stories. They described pancakes shaped like animals and Dad helping with homework and watching movies under a blanket fort. They described peace. The report came back glowing. The court saw through her. And now she was the one with restricted visitation. Monitored. No overnight stays. Court-mandated therapy before she could even ask for changes. That ruling broke her in a way I hadn't anticipated. She didn't show up to the next hearing. Didn't text. Didn't call. Just vanished. The woman who fought tooth and nail to control the narrative was suddenly silent. And that's when I realized the truth. She never wanted the kids. She wanted the power. She wanted the illusion of motherhood without the responsibility. And once that was gone, once the curtain was pulled back, there was nothing left behind it. I thought I'd feel relief. I didn't. I felt robbed. Because I had loved her. Once. Deeply. And now I was raising our kids in the shadow of a woman who had carved herself out of our lives with surgical cruelty. 3 weeks of silence. Not a word. Not a call. Not a text from a burner number. Not even a desperate voicemail disguised as casual concern. After months of chaos, manipulation, and psychological warfare, her disappearance felt unnatural. Like a calm in the eye of a storm that doesn't pass, it waits. But I knew better than to believe she'd accepted the outcome. She wasn't the type to surrender. She was the type to recalculate. The court's ruling hit her harder than I expected. I thought she'd weaponize her visits, arrive late, cancel last minute, cry in front of the kids so they'd carry her grief like a burden. But she didn't even show up once. She missed her first supervised session. Then the second. Then the third. Her lawyer gave some vague excuse about emotional exhaustion. What she didn't know was that I was already ahead of her. I hired a private investigator. Not to catch her cheating, those days were long over. I didn't care who she was with. I wanted to know what she was planning. Because she was planning something. I could feel it like static behind every quiet moment. And I was right. The PI called me on a Thursday. She's been talking to someone at Child Protective Services. That was all he said at first. I didn't react. Just waited. She's trying to file a report anonymously. Claims you're isolating the kids. That you're showing signs of paranoia and erratic behavior. She's hoping someone inside will open an investigation and escalate it fast. It was brilliant. From a distance, it looked like concern. A mother checking in. A responsible citizen doing her part. She knew the right buzzwords. She was always good at that. But she made a mistake again. She used her own phone to make the inquiry. We had the logs. We had the recordings. All perfectly legal, all submitted to my attorney. We didn't respond. We waited. Because when you know someone's setting a trap, the best move isn't to avoid it, it's to walk into it so convincingly they think you fell. A CPS worker showed up unannounced a week later. I let her in. I made coffee. The kids were in the backyard painting on the fence with water, giggling over nonsense. She asked me questions, all of them designed to provoke discomfort. Do you have anyone helping you with childcare? Have your children asked about their mother? Are you currently taking any medication? Have you experienced any mental health concerns in the last 12 months? She watched my face the whole time, waiting for a crack. But I didn't crack. I answered every question calmly. Provided paperwork. Invited her to speak with the school, our doctor, even the therapist the kids were seeing weekly. She stayed an hour. When she left, she smiled, not the polite kind. The real kind. I could see the relief in her eyes. She'd expected another messy custody battle story. She found a father who'd built a fortress. The report came back 2 weeks later, no signs of endangerment, emotional distress, or neglect. Case closed. And then the letter. Handwritten, folded into fourths, slipped under my door in the middle of the night. She'd never written me anything by hand in the last 5 years. It was always emails, texts, notes on the fridge that read like commands, not messages. But this letter? It was something else entirely. It didn't start with "Dear." It just started, "You think you've won. But you haven't. You took everything from me. And I'm going to make sure you lose something you actually care about." That was it. No name. No signature. No direct threat, but I didn't need one. It wasn't about the kids. It was about control. Again. She wanted me to feel watched. Unsafe. Off balance. She wanted to rattle the foundation she could no longer touch. But here's what she didn't realize. That foundation wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to my children. And there was nothing I wouldn't do to keep them from becoming her next project. That I didn't tell the kids about the letter. There are certain truths that don't belong in a child's world. They don't need to know that someone who once rocked them to sleep now wants to set fire to everything peaceful in their lives. So I filed the letter away. Quietly. Scanned it, dated it, added it to the growing archive. My lawyer sent a copy to the judge presiding over our custody case. Not to provoke action, but to document the pattern. That was key. Always build the pattern. It was how she'd eventually hang herself, thread by thread. And still the silence held. Until it didn't. I got the call on a Monday morning, just after dropping the kids off at school. "Mr. Hartley, this is Officer Nolan with the County Sheriff's Department. We need you to come in for a statement. There's been a report filed against you." She'd done it. The move I was waiting for. False allegations. She claimed I'd been physically aggressive during our last court-supervised drop-off, that I'd grabbed her arm, threatened her, said I'd make sure she never saw the kids again. A statement so far from reality it might as well have been plucked from a soap opera, but that didn't matter. Accusations are grenades. Even if they don't explode, they leave smoke. I met with the officer. I was calm, professional. I brought my witness, one of the court-appointed visitation supervisors who'd been there the entire time she claimed I'd gone off the rails. His report? Unshakable. Not only did nothing happen, but she'd also no-showed the drop-off entirely. She wasn't even there. The officer shook his head. We've seen her name before. So now I had 2 documented attempts, CPS and law enforcement, both shut down, both disproven, both filed under her name. And yet, somehow I still felt like I was holding a lit fuse. Because I knew the truth. When people like her start to lose control, they don't back down. They detonate. That night, I checked every lock twice. Set up new cameras. Changed every password. Every 2-step verification. I backed up all my files, then backed up the backups. I prepared for the kind of war that doesn't involve weapons, just strategy, reputation, and nerves. Then the email came. An anonymous tip sent to the kids' school. Claimed I was unstable. Claimed I'd been yelling at the kids during pickup. Said the children looked nervous and withdrawn, and that the school should consider involving the district psychologist. The principal called me in personally. She was kind, careful, told me the email raised flags but didn't feel right. I showed her the report from CPS, the restraining order, the false police report. I didn't have to say her name. The principal closed the folder and said, "Don't worry. We've seen this before. You're doing the right thing." That night I got another letter. This one was shorter. Typed. Centered on the page like a bad poem. I see you. I know where you are. This isn't over. No return address. No name. But I didn't need either. She was spiraling. Fast. But what she didn't understand was that I wasn't trying to outrun her anymore. I was documenting her collapse in real time. The first time she involved him directly, it was subtle. A missed call from a number I didn't recognize. No voicemail. Then a second, 10 minutes later. Then a text. "You don't know what kind of mistake you're making. She doesn't deserve this. You're hurting her." No name. No signature. But the grammar? The tone? Too polished to be random. Too deliberate. I traced the number. It was registered to a burner but routed through an area code near hers. The message wasn't the threat. The timing was. She tried the system. She tried CPS, the police, the school. She lost. So now she was outsourcing her madness. She'd activated him. Her boyfriend. He was real, confirmed. I hadn't cared to find him before, but now I needed to, and I did. He wasn't just some casual fling. He was older, divorcee, corporate type, clean-cut on the surface, but beneath, financial instability, a sealed domestic dispute in another county, a revoked teaching license. I dug until I hit something solid. He'd been reported once for inappropriate behavior around a colleague's teenage daughter. Not arrested, not charged, but enough to raise every internal alarm I had. And this was the man she wanted around my children? That's when I made the decision. Not to retaliate, not to confront, to expose. I scheduled a deposition. Not in court, pretrial discovery, through the custody case. We had leverage now. Enough to demand a hearing about who she was involving in the children's lives. Her supervised visitation was still suspended. But if she wanted it back, if she so much as breathed about wanting contact again, he'd be called in under oath. And we'd be ready. My lawyer sent the notice. 2 days later, my car was keyed. Not random. Deep, precise gouges down both sides. She'd seen the letter. Or he had. But I didn't flinch. I had security footage. I sent it straight to the court with a timestamp and a copy of the deposition request. The judge reviewed it privately. That same week, her visitation was revoked indefinitely. Not suspended. Revoked. The court called her actions concerning and escalating. I called them proof. But she still had one move left. It came on a Sunday afternoon while I was in the backyard helping my daughter plant strawberries. A knock on the front door. Not loud, but insistent. I opened it to find him standing there. Button-up shirt. Aviators. The kind of man who'd practiced his smile in the mirror too many times. "We need to talk," he said. I didn't step aside. Didn't speak. I just looked at him. Let the silence stretch. He kept going. "She's not well. You've pushed her into a breakdown. This doesn't need to get worse." I raised one eyebrow. "Nothing more. She still loves her kids," he continued. "But you're using them to punish her. And I'm not going to let you destroy her." Still, I said nothing. Then I took out my phone and pressed a single button. Behind him, a voice from the hidden camera mounted above the door said, "Recording started." His face didn't move, but I saw the flash of uncertainty, the first real crack in his mask. "You should leave," I said finally. "You'll regret this." "No," I replied. "You both will." And I shut the door. That video, submitted to the court the next morning. The judge scheduled an emergency restraining order hearing against him within 72 hours. I didn't show up for revenge. I showed up with a binder. The courtroom was cold. Not metaphorically, physically. Like the kind of chill that settles into your bones before anything even starts. Maybe they keep it that way to keep emotions from boiling over. Maybe they want you numb before they decide how much of your life to give back. She sat 2 rows ahead, flanked by her lawyer. Her posture was stiff, defensive. Her eyes scanned the room like a hunted animal pretending not to be afraid. But it was there beneath the surface. The panic. The realization that she'd run out of lies that still worked. He didn't come. Her boyfriend, her attack dog, he didn't show. Not for her. Not for himself. Maybe the video scared him. Maybe he was warned. Maybe he realized what she never could. I wasn't bluffing. I was done. The judge reviewed everything in silence. The letters. The school reports. The burner messages. The footage from my door. My kid's counselor's affidavit. It wasn't a trial. There was no jury. Just a decision. And it came without ceremony. Her petition to reinstate visitation was denied. Permanently. The restraining order against him granted. And then the judge turned to me. "Mr. Hartley, given the pattern of behavior and the clear threat to the children's emotional safety, I'm prepared to move forward with final custody terms today. Do you want to proceed?" I looked at my lawyer. He nodded once. "Yes, Your Honor," I said. And just like that, it was done. Full custody. Legal and physical. No visitation. No communication. No right to interfere. She sat frozen as it was read aloud. Didn't cry. Didn't interrupt. Her face went blank. Like her mind had disconnected to avoid the full impact. And when the judge asked if she had anything to say, she stood slowly, looked directly at me and said, "You stole them from me." I could have said 100 things in that moment. I could have listed every night she didn't come home. Every lie. Every cruel dismissal. Every time she looked at our children like they were weights around her ankles instead of blessings in her arms. But I didn't. I just looked back at her and said, "No, I saved them from you." She didn't speak again. And that was the last time I saw her. It's been 4 months. She vanished. Deleted social media. Moved out of state from what I've heard. She never appealed. Never reached out. I think some part of her knew that every step she took only made me stronger, more prepared. She underestimated me until the very end. The kids? They're okay. Better than okay some days. My son asked me if we can build a treehouse this spring. My daughter learned to braid her own hair. We laugh more now. The silence in the house is real. Not the heavy, suffocating kind. The peaceful kind. And me? I'm tired. But free. She thought I would break. That I'd bend until I snapped. That I'd beg. That I'd fold. Instead, I planned. I waited. I left no blood on my hands. No rage. Just strategy. My wife kept cheating on me like it was nothing. I stayed silent. Until one day, I vanished. I took the kids and cut all contact. The revenge I planned? She never saw it coming. Let her tell whatever story she wants. I have the only one that matters.